Welcome back into another week of WNBA Fantasy ads and drops. Don't forget to like and subscribe as we continue to help you out and make this final push into the fantasy playoffs. You might have clinched, you might have been eliminated this week, but either way, 1 week left in the regular season for ESPN standard leagues and a whole lot of injuries. As we take a look at Nepheesa Collier out for the Minnesota Lynx, Breanna Stewart out for the New York Liberty, Ryan Howard continuing to be out for the Atlanta Dream, as is Brittany Griner, Angel Reese continues to miss time, and Caitlin Clark as well. I was looking at all of these injuries this week and thought, how about we take a look at how these teams are dealing with their star players being injured and what that may mean for some players on your waiver wire or the production of people on your bench or in your lineup this week. I want to start off with the New York Liberty as they play today against the Dallas Wings. Breanna Stewart has now been diagnosed with a deep bone bruise and there's no timetable yet for her return. The first thing I thought as a Leona Febish owner when Breanna Stewart went down was fantastic for Febish. Well, it hasn't exactly worked out that way. We get to take a look here. In the last few games without Stewart, we've had below 20-point performances for Febish in all of them. 18, 17, 11, and 13 fantasy points. Now you see the minutes have been all the same for Febish. Nothing's changed there. The New York Liberty have, of course, added Emma Miesemann, and she got the start in her first game on August 3rd, played 17 minutes with 11 points against Connecticut, finished with 18 fantasy points. Now going down the road, that could potentially hurt the fantasy potential for Leona Febish. I wanted to take a look first with Febish and how her performance has been underwhelming so far without Stewart. Let's take a look at the Liberty at the Connecticut Sun most recently to assess what we're seeing out of Febish. Is this a production long-term issue? Is it something else? All right, so let's start off first play of the game. We've got Sabrina Ionescu here. We've got Leona Febish hanging out right here, guarded by Marina Mabry. Let's see where it happens. Let's roll the tape. So Febish gets the ball, looks over to the left wing. That's Jonquel Jones. And they're just running a little triangle action. Get it down low to Miesemann, wide open, had the layup, but you know what? Miesemann's been out of the league for a little bit, so she misses. Again, as I say, little triangle action, just talking about that, and that. A little like the old Chicago Bulls. Febish is in that triangle, just a missed shot, but I like that Febish is involved right away. Now let's jump ahead to the 8:47 mark left in the first quarter, still really early in the game. And here's Sabrina Ionescu. Here's Leona Febish setting a screen on ball. Ball screen set, Febish releases as Ionescu looks down to Miesemann. Perfect pick and roll action. Looks like it should be an easy layup for Miesemann, right? Kick ball, yep. So it goes out of bounds. When I was assessing a player like Kayla Thornton earlier in the year, say for the Golden State Valkyrie, now keep in mind Kayla Thornton was owned in about 9% of leagues at this time, I would see a play like this, let's say, where Thornton was very involved, but maybe missed. And I see the same thing here with Febish early on. She's involved. The fantasy points just didn't come to fruition. So early on, I'm thinking, okay, that's all right for Febish. So we jump ahead to the next possession here. Jonquel Jones with the rebound, taking the ball up the court. Looking to push it to Natasha Cloud, tipped out of bounds by, looks like Leona Lacone got it, and then last touch by Cloud. So turnover for the Liberty. What do I take out of that? That's just a wasted possession for everyone. So kind of like the kick ball. Who knows what was going to happen out of that possession, but we do know Febish can't be involved if you don't have the ball. So we have the Liberty here with Natasha Cloud, Emma Miesemann setting a screen over here on the left side. You've got Febish creeping out on the right wing, and she will be the recipient of a pass off this two-man action. See the roll by Miesemann. Go through that one more time. Just see that pick and roll draws the double. That gets the release of Miesemann. That forces Mabry to come up and guard Miesemann. That's Febish's guard. So of course, she's left open in the right wing. Marl's got a long rotation to make there, so an open three attempt. Looks good. Nice shot. Just missed off the front rim. The last play I saw for Febish in her first run of this game against the Connecticut Sun before she came out comes with about 6 minutes left. And you see Febish get the ball here. Take it back here. Hands off to Ionescu, sets the screen on JC Sheldon. That gets the release, and we've got the mismatch for Sheldon. And Sabrina likes those odds, off 1 foot. That works out all right. Febish is involved. She did everything right in that play, just didn't get the ball. So Febish comes in immediately. We'll see her setting a screen for Johannes on the left corner. Johannes takes a three, misses it. The dribble handoff there and just a little bump. That opens up Johannes, and then Febish is also right here. If Johannes wanted to, doesn't have the best angle, but maybe a shot fake there, but I'm ruling this play a positive for Phoebus's involvement and potential for future fantasy production. Let's check in at the 215 mark on defense, and I pause on defense right here to show you Tina Charles and Liana Phoebus matched up. And late in the first quarter, that was Phoebus's defensive matchup, was the post Tina Charles, second all-time leading scorer in the WNBA, brings the ball across, and again, the matchup, Charles, high post, working against Phoebus. Goes inside, does Charles, takes the shot, misses. Phoebus tips the rebound back to Ionescu. Nice job defensively there. That's no fantasy production. But mostly what I'm pointing out here is that with Breanna Stewart out, with the rotation of the Liberty stretched so thin, Liana Phoebus, naturally a wing, is going to be playing more 4, potentially here even guarding the 5 and Tina Charles. So that's to say, while I see the fantasy production being there potentially for Phoebus, we went over several plays there in the first quarter. But with that same caveat, the offense may continue to struggle a little bit until we get a little healthier, or maybe Meeseman a little more acclimated to the WNBA. And that will allow Phoebus's matchups to become maybe a little bit less of a mismatch on her side, trying to go up against a 4 or a 5 in the post defensively. A few other takeaways I had from that Liberty and Connecticut Sun game. Emma Meeseman, rusty in return. I don't want to have any judgment right now for her. Obviously, we know she's an incredible talent. It's been several years since she was in the WNBA. It looked like it in the first game, but basketball is completely repetition and rhythm-based. Layla Lacan, absolute must-add if you don't have her. I was late on picking up Lacan, so I do not have her. Lacan rostered in just 4% of leagues, available in 96%. So, but that rookie, along with Anissa Morrow, one of the few bright spots for the Connecticut Sun this season from a fantasy perspective. Also, on the case of Morrow, I brought her up before the All-Star break and said I thought rest of season, Morrow would outperform Olivia Nelson-Ododa and maybe even outperform rest of season Tina Charles. Well, Morrow's still available in 60% of leagues somehow. She's coming off of a 31-point fantasy performance, 16 points, 9 rebounds, a couple of blocks, and a steal. Post All-Star break, Tina Charles has been great, 30.2 fantasy points per game. I went too far with the Tina Charles comparison. Charles has really picked it up after a few slow weeks, and yeah, she should be the top scoring Connecticut Sun player the rest of the year, but Morrow is coming in at number 2 in the post. Since the All-Star break, 21.2 fantasy points per game, almost 3 points better than Olivia Nelson-Ododa's 18.8, just about finished, of Morrow overtaking Nelson-Ododa and that primary power forward spot. Just 19 minutes for Ododa in the loss to New York, 26-25 the games before that, and of course, just 9 minutes in that foul out against the Valkyries. Drop Nelson-Ododa, pick up Morrow if that's an option. I don't think you have much time left to do that, though, because I've been hearing Morrow's name being brought up more and more in other fantasy shows. So Angel Reese continues to be out for the Chicago Sky, and as we've talked about all year, that means great things for Elizabeth Williams. Elizabeth Williams has had 8 starts this year, most recently August 1st. We saw her go 7 of 12 from the field in 30 minutes in that contest. And in her 8 starts this year, fantasy production has been top 20 in the league. She's had 8 starts. She's averaging 11.8 points, 6.3 rebounds, 2.25 assists, 2.1 stocks per game in her starts. That equates to her season average being at 17.8 fantasy points per game. But when she starts, that jumps up to almost 25 points per game, 24.6 fantasy points per game when Elizabeth Williams is starting for the Chicago Sky. And it's pretty simple. Angel is out, Liz is in. She's still available in 40% of ESPN leagues. And if you have Williams on your roster, if and when you get the news that Reese is shut down for the year, oh boy. Yeah, that is a good day for you if you're going into the playoffs. Now let's take a look at a couple of young players either getting some minutes or coming back from injury. Cameron Brink for the Los Angeles Sparks and Dominique Malonga for the Seattle Storm. I think the biggest question with Brink coming back is how does that affect the fantasy potential for De'Erica Hamby or especially Azare Stevens? My takeaway after watching LA's double overtime win over Seattle is this. Brink isn't really a fantasy threat, Stevens or Hamby's production. If anything, I think she might help because Brink is a big defensive player off of the bench. It could give them some rest for some big stretches in the first and third quarters, as she did in the game against the Storm. She offers great defense. She's really fast at covering against both the fast break and in help situations as well. Outstanding shot blocker. That gets her into a little bit of trouble as well sometimes, the shot blocking. But overall, I saw a lot of good for Brink. Now, for Dominique Malonga, the youngest player in the WNBA, has been picking up some serious minutes as of late. Taking a quick look at how her production has picked up over the last several games. You see getting almost no minutes prior to mid-July. And since then, we've had 3 straight games with 20-plus minutes. But even without, she had a 32-point fantasy game in just 17 minutes with a double-double. That was back on July 24th. And after that game, Seattle gets a lead. I like Malonga's potential. If Seattle's in a tight game, I think that limits Malonga's potential a little bit because as we see, taking a look at the rotations here with the Storm and the Sparks in that game, Dominique Malonga gets the bulk of her points in this 13-minute stretch right here between the first and the second quarter. She gets a second run at the very end of the second quarter, and then just one stretch of 1 minute in the entire second half. That's going to be the case for a 19-year-old player with a veteran squad like the Storm. Close games, Malonga's out, but I still like her because of just how productive she is in her first half minutes. And if you're in a keeper league, of course, you're probably really excited about what you're seeing out of Malonga in the second half of the season. Let's take a quick look at the first quarter of Seattle hosting Los Angeles. This is Azurá Stevens to Hamby, and this is what I'm talking about, the chemistry between these two players. Jackson feeds Azurá, and Hamby with that perfect fill, and the dish off by Stevens. Brink's a great talent, but this is a couple of veteran players in mid-season form, and if for nothing else, Brink's just missed too much of the season to really offer too much of a threat at taking minutes away from either Stevens or Hamby. And going against Seattle, both of them continue to look great. I like both Stevens and Hamby rest of season. We jump forward to just under 3 minutes left in the first quarter. This is taking a look at Dominique Malonga right here working against De'Erica Hamby. Rickea Jackson at the top of the key. Screen comes up for Hamby. Go screen, she slips away, and Malonga immediately. She's just so quick at the height. 6'6" with this sort of lateral quickness to recover. And then you see Rickea off that ghost screen by Hamby. Pretty effective because her defenders left in the dust. And here's Malonga in the drop coverage, covering against Jackson and leading to an eventual turnover. And this is a similar clip where early in the second quarter, it cuts off a little early. And if you're watching the game, you see this a little better. But we've got Erica Wheeler in transition with Malonga trailing. And something that I like out of Malonga that just says she's going to continue to get minutes and continue to get opportunities to load up fantasy points is watch her cover and how fast she can go in transition with Wheeler, a really fast guard, and go set up into a pick and roll situation. So she's right behind. She's covering the ground, and just like that, we're already into the pick, and you can see LA on their back heels. And just like with Brink, Malonga, they're just so fast. How do you not continue to utilize that? And if I've got one thing for Malonga that I'd love to see improved, it's her hand strength or attack of the rebounds, because you see right there. Not that Malonga's coming from the best position. It's just as a difference maker in the post. I think in a few years, she gets that rebound off the jump over Jackson every single time. Whereas now, maybe a little more timid in her attack. And Jackson has the strong approach and gets the points there. Caitlin Clark's still out for the Indiana Fever. And that means Aerie McDonald continues to be a top-level streamer. We took a look at Elizabeth Williams' game starting for the Chicago Sky earlier. Let's do the same for Aerie McDonald. She's available in 75% of ESPN leagues, and in 11 starts, she's averaging a fantasy production of 22.8 points per game. That would be, among guards, 20th best in fantasy production. Coming off of the bench, McDonald is still averaging almost 21 points per game, which puts her overall guard number 23 on the season, a comp to Jewel Lloyd, Erica Wheeler, or Tiffany Hayes. Nepheesa Collier is out at least 2 weeks after the ankle injury on Sunday, and that makes Jessica Shepard an immediate factor in the fantasy game. She's available in 77% of leagues, so good chance she's still out there for you. Finished with 34 total fantasy points in Sunday's win over the Aces, a double-double with 18 points and 14 rebounds. She saw 27 minutes in this blowout, but with Nepheesa out, I think Shepherd's minutes now go back into the 20-plus category after she'd been hampered with her production, seeing minutes in the teens. This isn't a long-term move, but as long as Nepheesa's out, Shepherd should be in. And finally, with the Atlanta Dream, we don't know if Brittany Griner returns on Thursday, August 7th's game at the Sky. If she does, that of course hampers Naz Hillman's production a little bit, but Hillman has been a breakout player for the Dream, available in about 58% of leagues, 4 straight 30-plus point fantasy outputs. Hillman likely, of course, sees a hit when Griner comes back, but with Ryan Howard still with no timetable to return, Hillman's a very relevant fantasy player that I would want on my bench. Let's take a look at the schedule for the WNBA this week. 8 teams in action on Tuesday with the Wings at the Liberty, Indiana Fever at the LA Sparks, the Minnesota Lynx playing their first game without Collier in the starting lineup at the Seattle Storm, and the Connecticut Sun at the Phoenix Mercury. There's just one game on Wednesday, so it's a good time to stream players from either the Las Vegas Aces or the Golden State Valkyries if you have them. Alana Rupert is a player we did not mention today, but we've mentioned in the past, available in 86% of leagues. A good pickup for your streaming purposes on Wednesday. There are 6 teams in action on Thursday with the Dream at the Sky, Fever at the Mercury, and the Sun at the Sparks. Big game to watch on Thursday is Griner back for the Dream, is Reese back for the Sky. I think Elizabeth Williams continues to shine this week, and Naz Hillman as well. Friday has 6 teams in action as well. The Liberty at the Wings, the Washington Mystics are at the Minnesota Lynx, and the Seattle Storm are at the Las Vegas Aces. And then Saturday, just 4 teams. This is your second best streaming day to try to pick up empty spots between the Chicago Sky and Indiana Fever players, and the LA Sparks, and again, the Golden State Valkyries. Sunday, ton of games, so you should have full lineups with the Lynx at the Liberty, Washington Mystics at the Dallas Wings, the Atlanta Dream at the Mercury, Storm at the Sparks again. See if we can have another overtime 214-point output between these 2 teams. And then we'll close out the weekend with the Connecticut Sun at the Las Vegas Aces. And then we're on to the fantasy playoffs or the fantasy consolation bracket. I know which one I hope I led you to this year. Thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and check us out next week as we'll be looking at fantasy playoff matchups.